Okay, I had a lady, Turner, contact me about a problem with a tenon on an end grain Purple Heart turning. And it's kind of hard to explain in a PM back and forth. So I thought I'd just go ahead and do a short video, well, I don't know how short, showing how I do the tenons. Now the particular chuck is a Nova, 2-inch jaws. When the jaws are completely tight, you want approximately 1/8 of an inch gap between all the jaws. I wouldn't go much bigger than that because then you lose gripping power. These are the regular old-fashioned 2-inch jaws where you used a straight tenon and clamp down. Well, when you're using something like Purple Heart, it's best to design the tenon so that there's a gripping lip right inside that you should have fit tightly into a small groove, yet the jaws will still pull up tight to the wood so that there's no movement. And that's basically what I'm going to show. I've used this technique and turned 2-foot-long pieces back before I got other jaws, with a steady rest, of course. I can do up to 7 or 8 inches without a steady rest. Purple Heart, that's a whole different ball game. So anyhow, I'll show how I do these so that they hold well. I've already marked out on my piece of scrap wood. It's a circle, just a hair over 2 inches in diameter. First thing I will do is turn it perfectly straight back to a flat spot that you would have as a face for the bottom of the piece of wood to seat against. First I gotta light my cigar again. Damn things keep going out. Okay. Okay, right now it's perfectly straight. You got a face that the wood's going to seat against. You never want the end of the tenon to bottom out in the jaws. If it does, I'm guaranteeing you, especially on a wood like Purple Heart or something on that order, Osage Orange, you get a catch, you better be able to duck fast because pieces are going to come flying all over the place. It'll rip it right out of the jaws. Now I know some of the new jaws, 2-inch jaws, Protex, they have gripping teeth inside and they're more dovetailed. Well, all you have to do is make slight changes to your tenon to adapt to that new form of jaw. Don't rely on them gripper teeth to hold the wood. It's this lip just inside that does all the gripping. It bites into the wood and does the gripping. The serrations are only as a backup gripping force you don't want to rely on the grippers. They don't always work. Okay, I've got that straight. Change the angle of this a bit. Just a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. It doesn't have to be a deep groove. You can look at that little gripping lip inside. It's probably maybe a 1/16 of an inch at the most. You want it just a hair less than that. Put a little groove. Right there where the wood's going to mount against the chuck. There. That's all you need. Because the lady is turning Purple Heart, about 6 inches long, and she's hollowing it. Which is an adventure. Okay. Now when I put the jaws on, okay, and I go to tighten them down, they're going to pinch in. That gripper lip is right up against the wood. I always go around twice. Sometimes the jaws don't settle in on the first tightening. I always make sure they get tight. Okay. I'm going to have to dismount the camera, so there'll be some movement here, because I want to show how that's set up. And like I said, this is for the straight jaws, according to Nova's instructions. Okay, this back off my come on wire. I'm running a power supply on this. Alright, right in here. I can't really get a good, let me get this thing off this stupid nail. There we go. Too early in the morning. Okay. Nope, that ain't gonna work. Alright, back to normal. You can see there's a gap between the end of the wood and the bottom of the jaws inside. Give me a pencil. Feel like a teacher in high school. Right there is the gripper lip. It is sitting down in that little groove I made. You can barely see this pencil. This thing does not like to focus that close. It's sitting down in that groove, and the jaws are flat up against that face I made. Okay, when that jaws are totally tightened, you're not going to have a problem, because if you don't make that little groove, those little grippers are going to be sitting out there all by themselves, and there's going to be a gap between the wood and the jaws. That'll allow it to wobble and work loose. Off it goes. Do a straight tenon. Mine is 3/8 of an inch long. Put that little groove right next to that face. When you tighten that down, it will suck it in tight against the wood. Check it twice to make sure that it has seated tightly. It'll be touching back here, and it'll be gripping up front. You won't have the wobble And it takes a pretty major catch to rip one out on end grain. Cross grain you can snap a tenon off if you get a bad catch, but on end grain it's pretty hard to tear one loose. If you do, you get a cookie because you've managed to create a situation where you're going to have to go to the bathroom, because that's going to be one heck of a catch. Take this off. Okay. I hate this. This camera sucks. Excuse my French, folks. Alright. Now, if I can get this stupid thing to focus. I don't want to. Yeah, I'm get up there real close. You can just see the smear. I left the jaws dirty from the last job I did. Right there you can see where it goes all the way down into the groove and it's contacting all the way to the back of the tenon. It'll do that on all the jaws. Right there. You can see it right there also. It goes down into the groove and back to the end of the tenon. That's perfect contact. You've got 100% contact between the jaws and the wood. And the jaws are tight up against that face to support it. As long as you make it tight to start with, and after you start to turn, especially hollowing, after a few minutes, stop and check how tight the chuck is. Because sometimes you get a settling of the scrolls, especially if the chuck's used. Like this one's been beat up real good. I stop after a couple of minutes of turning. I double check the tightness of the chuck because they can settle and come loose just a tad, which will allow things to rock, and you don't want that to happen. Ruin your piece, makes it oblong. But that's all there is really to doing these tenons. And this is with the old style jaws again. It doesn't have any serrations in it. I've never had a bit of trouble. I've actually turned 16-inch bowls with my 2-inch jaws. Don't ask me why, it was a stupid idea, but it worked. I've done it several times now. You just have to keep in mind, when the bigger a round you get, the more leverage is working this way as you turn. You don't want to take really heavy cuts. You want to keep them light. But it can be done. But on end grain, that's what you want. No bottoming it out. You want that little groove for that gripper to sit down in. And between the flat spot inside the jaws and that gripper thing, you will get total contact and you won't have a wobble. Your chances of it ripping loose on a catch, unless it's a really horrendous one, it should not be a problem. So basically, do that. And as I was telling this lady on Purple Heart, I would drill a hole similar to this down to the bottom depth she wants. Then I would use a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch square inch scraper and remove the majority of the material inside. Then I use either my 3/8 bowl gouge or one of my cupped carbide tools. Oh, where is it? There it is. This has a cupped carbide on it, and I will use that to get almost to the finished for surface inside. Then I can come back in with a very sharp bowl gouge with a steep angle like I have here to go down along the walls. The bottoms I never use a gouge on. I usually use a 3/4 inch scraper or a flat end scraper with slight rounded corner on the left side, and I go across the bottom and I smooth the bottom. Saves you from having to sand it that way anyhow. I always hated that. So there you go. Let me know how it turns out, Kim. I'd love to see that thing when it's all done and you in one piece.